Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to welcome you all to this exclusive CEO panel discussion on the topic, preparing for the next disruption with people at the core. Modern times are uncertain with unprecedented disruptions putting the world into a shambles. The COVID-19 pandemic has served as a lesson for all organizations to be prepared for when disruptions take apart the world of work. It is important for organizations to be agile on their feet while evaluating the working atmosphere. Most importantly, it should be focused upon with people at its core. A more in-sync approach towards working with an organization's people is everything a modern workplace should adopt. Planning and preparing for an inevitable disruption is a good start towards being sensitive to the people working. And this is where the role of a CEO becomes all the more critical, where he or she needs to ensure business continuity along with having people as the focal point of all the change. In the CEO panel discussion today, we will delve deeper into the importance of having people at the core of everything that CEOs plan for as they move forward in a world which will continue to face uncertainties and disruptions. And with immense pleasure, I will invite and introduce our esteemed panelists for this session. I would first like to introduce Harish Goyal, Chief Executive Officer, Health and Wellness at ZSL Group. Harish is a veteran in the media and telecom industry with more than 2 decades of in-depth understanding related to media, telecom, infrastructure, health and wellness, consumer durables, and electronics. Harish drives the group's strategic discourse with a staunch belief that media, telecom, and health synergies in partnership will accelerate the pace towards global goals. Harish has led multiple new setups, streamlining operations and capitalizing on organizational synergies, achieving exponential revenue growth across industries and global markets. He has accomplished multifold increase in business turnover while superseding performance, including planning, execution, and launching of new products and businesses, leading to transforming the business in Asia, Pacific, and Africa as CEO of these countries. He has special love and passion for the business and growth potential of these markets. Then we have Johnson Cheng, Partner, Asia Head of RBB at Oliver Wyman, Singapore. Johnson has around 30 years of global consulting and investment experience across Asia, North America, and Europe. He's also a visiting lecturer at Tsinghua PBC MBA and EMBA, Xiamen MBA schools, a frequent speaker at World Economic Forum, Bow Forum, Harvard, Wharton, Columbia, University of Chicago, LBS, and LSE. He's a special advisor to the current Singapore FinTech Association as well as China FinTech Alliance. We also have joining us today, Brett Hogwood, CEO at Brightside Company, Malaysia. Brett is the CEO for Asia and Europe of Brightside, an insurance technology and broking group that delivers warranty insurance and insurance tech claims management services and platforms globally. Prior to joining Brightside Co. in 2019, Brett worked 6 years as Managing Director for Domestic and General Insurance, Australia and New Zealand, a global warranty and insurance provider. He has also worked at GE in a variety of roles, for the last being General Manager of the Australia and New Zealand Insurance Division. He has over 25 years of experience working in and with blue chip multinational companies across Europe, Asia, and Australia, leading businesses, overseeing acquisitions and new markets, and driving growth initiatives. Next up, we have Ishita Bandyopadhyay, Managing Director, Assessment Solutions at Aon, Southeast Asia and India. Ishita has over 12 years of industry experience in human resource advisory. As a leadership development specialist, Ishita has conducted over 110 senior level feedback, coaching, and debriefing sessions, both for individuals and as part of group debrief sessions. She has also led the deployment and implementation of 360-degree feedback exercises for various clients. In addition, Ishita has extensive experience in talent development assessment and has designed customized assessment centers for over 50 clients across the region in different industries. Ishita is also an expert in pre-hiring assessment design and validation for various high-volume assessments and has been a lead assessor in various assessment centers. Thank you so much to all our panelists for joining us today. It is a pleasure to have you with us. And with that, looking forward to a very, very insightful discussion today. And without any further delay, let us start with this exciting discussion. And I'll begin with my first question that I have for all my CEOs today. So how will preparing for disruption unravel structural expectations in an organization, especially for CEOs? And Brett, I'd like to come to you first with this question today.
Thanks for having me. Look, from a CEO point of view, I think preparing and and understanding disruption is becoming more and more important, and crisis management is becoming increasingly important. We've seen that over the last 18 months, absolutely. And I think, it's very important for us to, and what I've found is, asking what if questions a lot more. And I think from a CEO's point of view, we used to ask what if questions a lot around budget time, and we used to ask it a lot around governance and regulatory regimes and requirements. But we're asking it across all of our functions now, and a lot more often. And I think that's becoming more and more important. And I think the more disruption that we see, and the last 18 months, as an example, we've really been forced into not only asking those questions, but really putting people first in a lot of our decision making, which I think good companies were doing absolutely previously. I think everyone has been forced to do it a lot better, and I think that the people who are lagging behind have really been forced to pick up the slack quite a lot, because people and technology are the things that are helping us through this. And it's being able to really try and see around corners around how we're going to support people, how we're going to deal with disruption moving forward, because, the world is absolutely changing. It's changing at a faster pace every year. It's exponential, and, we've got to get better at trying to see around corners a lot faster and a lot more clearly than we have been in the past. And it's forcing us to really, really look a lot deeper behind how we're dealing with people, how we're dealing with technologies, and the speed at which we can implement policy and procedure and systems to cope, not just to catch up, but try and get ahead. And that's the difficulty at the moment, is trying to get ahead and seeing, what's next.
Yes, absolutely. I think I totally agree with you, Brett. People and technology have been at the core of this entire change that we've been facing for the past 1.5 years, and even before so, but the focus has become deeper in this past 1.5 years, especially. And thanks for sharing. Yes, it is time to, look at the what if questions and try and find answers to those. Thanks for sharing that. Harish, what about you? How do you think will have disruptions, for CEOs to unravel structural expectations?
Thanks, Yasmin, for having me. It's a very interesting question and interesting times, I would say. While, we are saying that it's a disruption for certain businesses, probably it's also helped, like, if I talk about the health and wellness business, or if I talk about the entertainment media business, this has been more of, an opportunity wherein, people being at home, everyone getting health conscious, and everyone concerned about the well-being. So it's been an opportunity. And at the same time, we have all seen 500 odd plus days of this so-called disruption, I would say. And we have seen different phases of this. If we talk about, last 7 quarters, starting from January 2020, initially there was I would say, denial, or, we were not willing to accept. And then, there were different kind of environments wherein we were saying that, look, maybe it will last 2 quarters, it will last for maybe, 20 quarters. And now, with these 7 quarters, having seen all of it, I think it's high time that we stop thinking this as a disruption and we accept it as way of life and plan our businesses. Of course, we can do our plan A and plan B, and then be very sure of, how and when, as leaders and as CEOs, we want to run these businesses. Because today, more than, the earlier times, when team look at us, they look at leaders as if they are talking to a doctor, and we will write a prescription, and that is the solution that, which will cure everyone. It will cure business. It will cure employees. It will cure employment. So that image, I would say, is something that we have to protect as a community, because people are looking and coming to us for solutions. And employees, earlier we used to talk about teamwork, having a lot of social networks and getting togethers, having cocktails, different, I would say, offsite. Now, all of us are for long enough time operating from homes. As we go down the line in our hierarchy system within the organizations, there is more uncertainty in certain set of employees. So how do we give them comfort? How do we assure them that their work, their job is safe? People are so much looking forward to come back. And we seem to be forgetting that there used to be time where used to be 120 people, 200 people in our offices, and we used to have lunch together. It's been a while that I have not seen more than certain set of, beyond my family members without mask. So mask is as if, so those changes, faster we accept, better it is for our businesses. And I would say, when I'm planning my things, I'm giving as long as 5 years, I'm giving as long as 20 quarters. And if things change and improve, which is improving with every, passing day and every passing week, I think it's even better for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Harish. Thank you. So nicely put when you said that your people are looking up to you. They're looking for the solutions, they're looking for comfort. And I think that's the role of a leader, especially since the pandemic struck. It became all the more important for them to have that empathy towards the people that work for them. So thanks for sharing those thoughts. And yes, it is time to, accept that the disruption is here to stay and prepare for the businesses accordingly. Thank you. Ishita, I'm going to come to you next. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, let me start with what I've observed, especially when I have looked at my teams across India and Southeast Asia. Something amazing has happened during this time, as you're calling it disruption, though I think I'd go with what Harish said. It's the true test of resilience. And what I've seen is leaders who I thought would be able to overcome these dips in businesses and these hard times. As they have moved out, I have seen the emergence of really resilient leaders in the process. And these, I think, are a good thing for business, because I know that they are going to transform the business with a new way of thinking as the days are coming in. So in short, I think I'm extremely pleased with the fact that this has been an opportunity for new leaders to emerge and show their grit to be able to go through more difficult times and remain positive and upbeat given given situations that's happening in Malaysia or Indonesia, and Singapore is going through its own curves. India has gone through a wave one. But those leaders who have stayed on track and still kept their focus have really shown true resilience. So if you were to ask me what has really emerged as a good thing for me, is I have seen that those leaders who have an agile mindset, who are ready to shift and change and be nimble around, whatever is coming their way, and still remain accountable and self-driven, have really sustained. Given the situation, like Harish was saying, there is no longer the opportunity to socialize and kind of get the team together in a visionary situation. Still, being able to pull people together and get the work done and making sure that things are getting executed to the T where we want it to happen. I think that has been tremendous. So definitely, I think having the right team with you, the right kind of people working with you, has been a blessing in disguise in these times of disruption.
Absolutely, Chita. So nicely said. I think, yes, resilience was really tested in these times. And I think our heroes were our leaders who actually showed that resilience and agility, and the way they changed. It was like overnight for them at times. There was a certain way the business was functioning, a certain way workplaces were functioning. And overnight, and they were at the core of bringing that change. They had to lead that change. So I think those who were able to lead it from the front have been organizations who have survived this disruption and have been, sailing through it very successfully. So thanks for sharing that. Johnson, your turn last. What do you think about this? How will preparing for disruption, unravel these structural expectations that, from CEOs today?
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I agree a lot on the comment the other three esteemed speakers have shared. But a few comments, right, and try to keep it within 2 minutes. The keyword is disruption, right? Which I think most of us naturally will link on to the current situation of COVID-19, which obviously led to a lot of disruption. But I think COVID-19 is one form of disruption, right? So as leaders, CEO, you need to be prepared for more disruptions coming. And disruptions by definition, in strategy, we call curveballs, meaning that thing is not coming directly at you. It's coming from the side, meaning it will be your blind spot. And the challenge for CEO are a few, right? So CEO by definition, probably around my age, unless you're a CEO of a startup, which will be half my age. What's the problem with my age? The good thing with my age is we come with a lot of experience, but we also come in with a lot of old habits. All right. So the adoption to change, yes, I think we've seen a lot of great examples, but I think we should also recognize it's not easy for CEOs, right? And depending on the size of your company and therefore the support the company can provide to the CEO, that challenge to the CEO is different, right? In terms of the amount of talent. I mean, not every company would have someone like Ashida to help him or her in terms of HR 360, right? So let's be aware of that. And the way a CEO used to make decision, have people around him or her, have people coming into the conference room discussing, reading the body language, that has changed, right, in the last 18 months. But more importantly, I think CEOs, because of this disruption, hopefully, there's one thing we learned. Yeah, we heard a lot of agility and all that, but what does agility mean? There's multi-levels of implication. Agility for himself, organization, and his direct report. Because the CEO needs to be empathy enough to understand the one down or two down below him or her also have to deal with a team of people where they used to supervise on-site. Now, 50% work from home, 50% on-site is a whole new challenge. Plus, more and more, you're getting the millennials who has a whole different sets of values. And depending on markets, if you're in the markets like China, the millennials are not working for money because most of their parents would have a few apartments, right? If they really need money, all they need to do is just sell one apartment and they are made for life, right? And in fact, most millennials these days, right? If you just take out any of the HR research report, the values of the millennials very different from people like myself. Those who were born in the 60s, where we really need to work to pay our bills. So there's nothing right or wrong about it. It is what it is, right? So I think in terms of disruption, COVID-19 show us something that will be more, meaning becomes a norm. Not just work from home. It's the nature of disruption, meaning it will be something that you have not seen before. We thought we saw SARS, but SARS only lasted for 6 months. So last year we were all hoping to travel again after 6 months, but I'm still hoping after 18 months, right? So it will be something that you have not seen before. The next disruption that will come, it will be something you have not seen before. Or it will have been something that you have seen before, but a lot more intensive. Or it will be something that is the same intensity, but with a lot more complexity. Meaning, for a CEO, you need to, and it's not easy. Again, it's easy to say, but it's not easy to do. You need to stick to your first principle as leader, but you need to be able to reimagine everything else in order to redefine everything else. And that is a very difficult thing to do. I'll give you one mental picture to understand how difficult it is. It is like a car in motion while trying to change the tire. Imagine your car is in motion, but at the same time, you need to change the tire because the technology is out, your employee value system is out, the rules of the games is out, the supply chain is out, the geopolitical policy is changed, right? Your business have to continue, right? Your stakeholders are the same, your customer, your talent, your shareholders, your regulators and what have you. Those have not changed. but everything else around them are changing and will continue to change with more intensity, with more complexity, with more uncertainty. So I think if anything at all, COVID-19 hopefully shows us, unfortunately, what's next to come in terms of disruption.
Thank you, Johnson. I think the example of the car in motion has been an eye-opener for me, I think. And that's something that actually leaders have learned in the past 18 months, like a car in motion and trying to change a tire. And I think we've all tried to do that. And thankfully, some have been able to find the right, formula or the right way to do it. So great example there. Yes, disruptions, as we all said, are here to stay. They might come in different forms. They're becoming a way of life in some way or the other, though we don't want them to. So my next question is about, there will be more disruptions, right? They would be unprecedented. We might not be prepared for them. So the kind of preparation or the way we all coped up to it, right? Will it stay? Will it become redundant, or will it be useful for future disruptions as well? Brett, would you like to answer that quickly? And then we can see if any other speaker wants to join in also.
Look, I think from a planning and a learning point of view, we're all in a lot better position now to deal with disruption in the future because we've had such a big one. I'm not quite Johnson's ilk, but going through big disruptions over the past 10, 15, 20 years, you understand when there are big game changes in the marketplace, and COVID's certainly been one, but there's as Johnson referred to, there's a lot of disruption happening on a much smaller scale, but a lot more frequently. So, whether that's technology, whether that's customer expectation, whether that's the way that, employees and millennials are expecting the workplace to be. So, all of the things that we've been learning over the last 18 months, all the things that we've been focusing on around improving technology so people can work remotely, improving cyber security so our IT guys can get comfortable that people can work remotely, making sure that, the tools that people have when they're not in the office are able to get the job done and they're safe and they're secure and they're, and their occupational, health and safety are met. All of those sort of things we've learnt, and they will all hold us in good stead moving forward. But we're learning to move more quickly. We're learning to be more, react a lot faster, but we're also learning to plan a lot better. And that's been really, really important for the way that we've moved. And I think, we're also seeing that now that we're starting to come back into offices, not that, necessarily here in Malaysia we're coming back just yet, but, we're certainly looking at what does the office space now need to look like. So we're looking at different questions that we're asking, the business 18, 24 months ago. What does the design need to look like? Are we going to have everybody in at once? Hybrid models are becoming a buzzword. What's that really mean from an office space point of view? And I think really important when we're thinking about, particularly around hybrid working situations, what are the people going to do when they're in the office versus what they're doing at home? I don't think we can ask people to come into the office and sit in front of their computers like they can at home. That's just not going to be worthwhile. So we've got to make sure that when people are in the office, they're doing different things. We're really focusing on collaboration. We're focusing on, innovation and connectivity rather than just getting those task processes done. So we're becoming more system focused and outcome focused than we've ever been. And I think they're the things that are really going to make a difference as we move forward in our thinking and ensure that, rather than being that very task related measurement tools, we're looking a lot more at outcomes. And I think previously I've seen, before this latest major disruption, there was a lot of people, sales teams, marketing teams a little bit, were very good at flexible working, very good at remote managing. Operational teams, IT teams were terrible at it. And I think we've really seen a shift in how those leaders have stepped up into being able to lead remotely, how to measure and coach remotely in a lot better ways. So all of those things are going to help us with minor disruption. But it's being able to move a lot faster, being able to have the systems and the technologies in place to allow you to do that, that's going to keep you moving forward.
Great. Thanks, Brett. I think I do agree with you. Yes, Harish, please add on.
So just to add on this, I think I would say that, all of us have already reset our way of doing businesses. Working is important. Location is not important. And technology has really helped us stay connected. I mean, if we take example of this panel itself, we have been all talking from our own respective offices. We have ourselves used to connecting this new way of connecting. Earlier way of connecting was, as Johnson said, in the boardroom. And now the new way of connecting is webinars and technology wise, I have started to learn to understand the body language on a camera now. I've started to understand, the way we used to understand across the table. So now I understand, what the person is saying, what the tone is saying, and, how in a short while everyone is trying to express their thought. And I would actually say that our biggest thanks and compliments should go to the technology team who is actually keeping all of us connected. There were, times wherein Wi-Fi's and the networks were unstable. Now, I mean, if we take today itself, 40 minutes, we have been actually, just connecting, no blurred images, no blurred talks, no missed, comments or words. So I would say we have very quickly readjusted to this new environment. And now we are better equipped to, whatever else may come our way. I think we are better equipped. We can very quickly reset our thought process and mind to the new environment or change in environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Yes, Ishita, please.
Yeah, Yasmin, I'd really love to add to what Brett and Harish has already articulated. And I think both of them have given very detailed and explicit descriptions around some of the policies that we are changing, how communication and connection is becoming important. The way I probably want to look at it is two things. One is trust, and the other is accountability. Working with people across locations, trusting that, even if you're working from home, you're doing your job and you're delivering on the promise that you've made, and remaining accountable for the promises you're making. I think that is the true test that we have gone through. And to remain relevant in the future, we have to make sure that we recognize this in people and teams that we are working with. So broadly, if I were to summarize, to remain relevant in the future and prepare for the next disruption that we are going to face, there are three things that I'd probably look at for my teams and my businesses. One is having people who are able to demonstrate this trust and accountability at the core, and making sure that I am having the right people doing this at all times. Second is making that investment, and like Johnson had pointed out, redesigning and reimagining things. We have to make sure we're investing in technology. And the third one is data. Leverage of data is going to define how we are going to move forward. And this leverage of data, we have to enable people to be able to do that constantly and continuously in the future, so that they can preempt the next disruption and try to be prepared for it in every possible way, or have a plan A, B, C, D at any point of time. So I'd probably summarize it in these three things: having the right people, having the right data sets, making sure that the technology is absolutely up to the mark to tackle this in the future.
Absolutely. I think you summarized it really well. It makes a lot of sense. I think, Johnson, anything you'd like to add to that, as to will these preparations that we've made now, will they remain relevant? I know we've all done a reset, and we have our lessons that we've learned. Are these lessons going to help us further? So what are your thoughts on that?
I think, yes, again, short 3 points. First is definitely whatever we have learned so far will stay relevant, in fact, very relevant, at least in the near term, in the next couple of years. One would be, we all realize that we are a lot more resilient than we originally thought, right? Most of us, including myself at 53, I never, thought I could learn so much electronic gadget within such a short period of time, and I did, right? So therefore, that newfound level of confidence and the adaptability that we all achieve and experience in the last 18 months will stay relevant and important. The awareness of mental health, I think, is a good thing. That, in a way, a good thing coming out from this bad thing. Therefore, we become more mindful of each other as human beings, colleagues, friends, and whatnot. I think the third thing, I just want to echo Ashita's point on data. That is the thing I feel like, based on what I've seen in my clients, will be a important opportunity, but not an easy one to capture, right? One thing that this pandemic has made is the adoption of digital, right? Everything. And as a result, the vast amount of data that will be made available. But even leading banks are struggling, which means good business for us in an ironical way, right? As management consultant, in terms of capitalizing or capturing opportunities, both in risk management as well as customer service, marketing, what have you, that is all buried in the vast amount of data. But the talent in terms of data management, data analytics, leave alone AI and the more advanced ones, are at a very early stage. So I think I would strongly encourage, use this opportunity to continue double down in your investment in terms of data management, and there's also risk management. There'll be data governance and all that. So the whole ecosystem around data will be something that will be a no regret move for any organization and individual.
Absolutely. I think very nice, Super. Thank you so much for sharing that. Since Johnson spoke a little bit about how the focus on employee well-being also became a highlight in the past 18 years. My next question to our leaders is, are most organizations bound to prioritize employee well-being going forward? And Ishita, I think you'll have something to share about that based on a recent research that Aon has also done. So if you could tell us how are leaders going to have this focus going forward on employee well-being?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Yasmin. Well, let me start a little bit with the basic needs theory. So if we go and read up about it, you'll also see that well-being would have taken its place in the basic needs theory as something that most employees would have thought was a given in various ways. But with the evolution of industrialization and with the services, knowledge workers working constantly over a period of time, they had put in well-being on a back seat. And while this was a basic human need, it took the entire COVID-19 pandemic to bring it on the forefront. And oh, what a way in which they have been brought at the forefront. Because when we have been conducting our well-being researches across Asia Pacific, we've done this for over 1,500 organizations, and we are seeing every organization coming up with a well-being strategy. And well-being is seeing its place in the core business imperatives as well. At a very basic tactical level, of course, there is a question around remote working and things like that. So what our survey has actually shown us is that most organizations are really allowing flexibility of work at every point of time. So organizations are going to have hybrid working policies to enable this well-being for their people. The second element is they are going to build managerial capability to respond to employee needs of well-being. It is not a myth that people are suffering from depression at different levels. So how will managers, how will people working with you be able to support you if you're going through difficult times? And with the work from home condition, what is happening is there is so much of a blur of work-life integration that individuals and sometimes millennials are finding it difficult to cope with this entire blur. In fact, in our survey, it was very interestingly seen that it was the millennials who actually wanted to come back to workplace, not so much the leaders. In the third place, what we have, of course, the need to support employees through various well-being initiatives, like having employee assistance programs, like providing better coverage through the benefits plans, etc. And the fourth element and the last one, which I thought was very core and it's more long-term, is providing employees with a continuous learning environment where they can reskill and upskill themselves. And this has become very, very important because of the fact that the employees need to feel that they are not becoming redundant in the entire process. So to upkeep their mental well-being, it is important to give them that opportunity to see that they have use of their skills in the future, and be it learning a digital skill or learning something absolutely new that they were not open to earlier. It gives a lot of confidence in individuals and helps them feel that there is no risk with their skill becoming redundant in the future. Hence, this too, I feel, falls under the well-being category, where organizations are continuously investing in people upskilling and reskilling. So in summary, there is, of course, the entire element around ensuring there is well-being policies in the organization. There is enough managerial support. There is the right hybrid working policy in place. And of course, encouraging a lot of continuous learning and reskilling opportunities for employees.
Thanks, Suchita, for sharing. I think, yes, along with having a focus on people and technology and data, I think this is like the fourth pillar that leaders are now, really hell-bent on focusing on, and which is employee well-being. So thanks for sharing that. In the interest of time, I'll jump to the final question, because I'd like to hear the views of all our leaders here. And it is, how can leaders support and prepare their employees for the next disruption, or we might not call it the next disruption, it could be the next level of change? And is there a noticeable change in leadership approaches due to the constant change in working cultures? And Harish, would you like to take this up first? How can you support employees for the next change?
So Yasmin, it's like a complete circle. What are we doing since last 15, 18 months? We are basically looking at reskilling ourselves, reskilling our teams, refining and redefining our new ways of working. So I think we have had different quarters, and our strategies continue to evolve with every quarter. Because initially we thought maybe, this will last for certain months. We never actually thought of wave 1, wave 2, wave 3. And we all relied on vaccination 1, vaccination 2, and now Singapore talking about booster dose. So basically, it's as we are doing, and as we are, learning, we are refining and redefining our policies consistently. And that's a good way, I would say. So basically this learning and changing change of things will never stop. And whatever may come our way. I mean, this is for all 5 of us on the screen. This is the first pandemic we have seen. We have experienced it. We have survived. Our businesses have survived. Our teams have survived. And some of us have grown. And today, I am actually seeing more of us bullish. Johnson has been clearly saying that, look, we consultants are bullish. I have been saying that health, wellness, entertainment, media has been flourishing. And I'm sure, my insurance colleagues, Brad he's already smiling, the widest smile with the insurance business. And Ishita's, the need of HR people itself, the function itself has increased. So I think it's a happy state of affair. And let's start to stay positive and go on with it.
Thank you, Anish. That's so beautifully put. I think yes, it's we are learning. Learning is a continuous process. There'll be changes, there'll be disruptions, but as human beings, we are bound to adapt, right? We are bound to show resilience and agility, and adapt to any change. So that's a great thought. We need to stay positive on it. Brett, next over to you. Let me hear it from you. How can we prepare employees for this next level?
Yeah, look, I completely agree. I think the learning and development is key to it, and I think making sure we're focusing on that. I think there's a lot of activity that we're seeing on experience now as well. So we're for a long time talking about customer experience and really focusing on that rather than just customer service. Now we're really looking at experience for our employees as well. So not just providing a website that they can look at or online training, looking at different ways to do that. So one of the things that we've been looking at a lot is using games in training to help make it fun and make it more of an experience, but also help them learn and upskill, and that's been really good for soft skills, compliance and sales and customer service and things like that. So there's a lot more things we can do now because technology has advanced that they're allowing us to provide different experiences, and not just in the L&D space either, but just in the benefits. Ishtar was talking about really investing more heavily in the benefits for our staff and looking at experience for that. So because they've been remote, we've needed to think of different ways to support them other than just the old ways of having a morning tea in the office or something like that. So being able to support them with the different experiences. And one of the other things that has been very important for us, because most of our staff here in Kuala Lumpur and Singapore are call center staff. So they've been sitting at home on the computer a lot, and we've really seen some tech exhaustion from those guys. We've over-indexed probably on Zoom calls and Teams calls, and really giving them some time off the computer has been really important as well. So looking at their tasks and trying to really understand where we can support them and really help them get a break from just being sitting on the screen all day, every day, alone in their house. That sort of thing's been really important. So that experience has been really, really important for us. And I think the other thing that we've really been looking hard at is the technology. So yes, there's a lot going on to help our businesses and our customers with technology and different platforms, but how we can provide better tools for our teams. And one of the things that tend to make people very nervous, particularly in our space, in the insurance space and the insurtech, fintech sort of space, is AI and machine learning, and how's that going to affect our people and process and things like that. So spending a lot of time upskilling them on different things that AI and machine learning is going to be great for process improvement and things like that, but showing our teams and clearly communicating where that helps them and where their next role might be, or the tasks are changing for them. So, they're not competing with those technologies. It's enhancing their business and their skills as well. So there's a lot of work around communication of what the future looks like and absorbing a lot of the fear around that. I think part of the big role of being a CEO is absorbing a lot of fear in a lot of different ways. And part of that is, what happens with COVID, what's happening with the business, those general things, but then also what's the future look like with all this technology coming down the pipe? How does that affect my role? So being very clear about that's really important.
Absolutely. That's very nice. You said that as a CEO, your role is to absorb the fears, be it about business, be it about the future, and show your people what can lie ahead for them. Very beautifully said. The focus is on employee experience. And that's exactly the theme of our conference today, high touch and high tech workplaces, where you bring the right combination of technology and human for people to feel, feel better about work, the kind of work that they're doing. Johnson, your final thoughts on this question. How do you think we can prepare our people for the next disruption?
Thanks. And I again agree with all the comments before me. And in addition to that, I think just 2 or 3 points to add. One is 5G is at our doorstep, right? So that will open so post-pandemic, we will all see a few years of super prosperity, right? So it will be a rebound. How do we prepare our employees to ride that wave of rebound? And I think a lot would have to do with 5G. right? So how do we prepare our employees for that? That's a positive one. Not so, and a second positive one is to do that. Yeah, I think especially in Singapore, we tend to go for the hard skills, but I think it is the soft skills that matter even more, right? And that is something that a typical Singaporean lack, unfortunately, which is imagination and creativity. So how do we help our employees on that front so that you can capture, what's the next wave that is coming? The next wave is a good one, and not the COVID wave. The last, which is not so positive, is how do we prepare or change enable our employee for a better lifestyle habits. The work from home, while has brought a lot of benefits, some mental health issue, but it is also started to sow the seeds of a lot of health issues to come, right? You go down to any supermarkets, the potato chips are always out, the noodles are always out, right? So as a result of working from home, unfortunately, I think our lifestyle habits, for most, some of them has gone better, right? They'll go to gym, they go yoga, they go jogging, but I think those are minority. Majority will be sitting at home in front of the TV with ice cream tub on one hand, potato chips on the other hand. That will bring about some health issues.
Sure.
And how do we help our employees for that? I think those are the 3 points I would say in addition to comments before me. Thank you.
Yes, Ishita, what are your final thoughts about that?
Well, I think my esteemed panel has already shared most of it in a very detailed and conclusive way. I kind of resonate a lot with Johnson's point around soft skills are going to become more important because hard skills are more learnable. And as a business, what we do is we help organizations do psychometric assessments through our tech-enabled platform. So that's what you are saying, right? Technology enabling organizations to make decisions through their people. And these decisions may be more around their soft skills abilities is what I'm expecting to see in the future. So in short, if I were to summarize my experience with my various clients, as well as with my 150 Packs organization, I will say that it is going to be all around empowering talent in the future, making sure that they understand what skill sets they require, they upskill themselves, they invest in their lifestyle, and they know that the organization is going to support me in whatever I'm doing, but I'm accountable to take care of myself and give in my best at every point of time. And it can be various things like opportunities, career development opportunities, talent mobilization opportunities. Everything will be tech enabled for employees. So making them more empowered to push through with their careers is going to be something critical that organizations have to look at to ensure that business is successful in the future, because it's the people after all who matter, right?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chita. I think that's has to be the closing note here, that people are all that matter for organizations. So on that note, that brings us to the end of this engaging panel discussion. It was beautifully put together. I had so much to learn from each one of you. Thank you for joining us. Indeed, this is not the only disruption we have faced, but the lessons we have learned in these 18 months will certainly pave the way for future. People, technology, data are going to be at the core of all the change that comes even in the future. We have reset ourselves in the past and will continue to redefine ourselves going forward. And our leaders, just like all of you, will play a very key role in that. So thank you so much for joining us today, Brett, Harish, Johnson, and Ishita. It was a wonderful discussion.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, thank you. Thank you so much. We come to the end of this session, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We will now move on to yet another exciting panel discussion on reinventing employee experience in the new era of work. Do not miss it. See you soon. And thank you once again.